Welcome everyone to the third House Education meeting. If you will, please silence your phones in order to avoid interruptions. And also, before we really begin, I want to give a shout out to, we have 91 teams across the Commonwealth this week competing in the cheer competition in Orlando, Florida, Disney. This is a great honor. You have to be invited and you have to qualify. So I just want to give a shout out to that group and wish them safe travels and flawless routines. It's amazing the work that goes into these routines and the discipline and work ethic and dedication. So I just wanted to wish them well and a good trip down into Disney this week. Also, remote members can be considered present and vote on bills if they are participating in their annex office. If you are participating remotely, but not from your annex office, then you can participate in discussion, but you will not be able to vote. When you join the meeting remotely, your microphone will be muted. Automatically unmute your mic, please, to answer the roll or to speak. If you have any questions or comments during the meeting, please indicate that on the meeting chat function. And I guess that's all the business. Liz, if you will, please call the roll.
Representative Baker.
In person.
Representative Banta.
Here in person.
Representative Bojanowski.
In person in the room.
Representative Decker.
Present in the room.
Representative Donahue.
Yes, ma'am. Present.
Representative Dossett.
Present in the committee room.
Representative Hart.
Here in the room.
Representative Koenig.
Present in my annex office.
Thank you. Representative Lewis.
Present.
Representative Massey. Representative McCool.
Here.
Representative Miller. Representative Gibbons-Prunty.
Here in the room.
Representative Rayburn.
Here in the room.
Representative Riley. Representative Scott. Representative Timoney.
Here in the room.
Representative Tipton.
Present in the room.
Representative Weber.
Present in the room.
Representative White. Representative Wilner. Chair Huff.
Present. We do have a quorum and are duly constituted to do business. First, we have some special guests with us. The Career and Technical Entrepreneurial Education Month is this month of February, and so we would like to invite them to the table. We're pleased to have Hewitt Lessenberry, the Technical Student Association President and a student at Barron County High School, here with us today. If you would please come to the table. If you have any special guests, and introduce yourself for the record, and you may proceed. You may need to make sure your mic's on, please.
Hewitt Lessenberry, there we go. In October of 1912, a man named Carl Perkins was born to the sleepy town of Heidemann, Kentucky, just west of Pikeville. His curious nature and thirst for knowledge made him a fantastic student, inspiring him to become a teacher in Knott County for a school of just 90 students. Whilst teaching in the small rural community, Perkins witnessed the disparity of opportunity for his students, leading him to U of L's School of Law in search of solutions. After graduating, he served briefly as the Commonwealth's 31st District Attorney before deployment during World War II. After his service concluded, he arrived home and became a state representative, serving as chairman of the Committee on Education and Labor for 17 years until his death in 1984. Whilst in office, Perkins operated with equity of education always in mind, paving the way for monumental programs such as Head Start and the Federal Perkins Student Loan Program for the underprivileged. The majority of his time, though, was invested in developing and maintaining career and technical education programs across not only the Commonwealth, but the nation as a whole. His commitment to improving student access to CTE and the quality of such CTE lives on to this day in the Perkins Act, which annually allocates $1.13 billion across the U.S. Hello, I'm Hewitt Lessenberry, a senior at Glasgow High School in Barron County, and I'm speaking on behalf of career and technical student organizations across the Commonwealth as the current president of Kentucky's Technology Student Association. If you were to ask me why I joined TSA 3 years ago today, I wouldn't tell you to get a jump start on a potential career pathway. I'd say because I thought my teacher, Mr. Dakin, was funny and passionate. It wasn't a burning internal compulsion to get involved with engineering. In fact, I didn't really know what engineering was. It was simply due to my respect and admiration for a teacher. Educators are the feet on the floor and the face on the invitation into CTE. Their enthusiasm alone, or lack thereof, is to credit for many students' perceptions towards entire career pathways. The long-term effects of one passionate teacher, after all, is how Perkins funding came to be, and therefore why I'm here in front of you today. At Glasgow High School, our teachers recognize this and are not shy in expressing their love for what they do. As a result, student involvement in various clubs and organizations is quite high, even for incoming freshmen. For college-bound students such as myself, involvement within these clubs can prove quite fruitful. Not only are we able to explore and define our many interests, but we're also able to nourish our facilitation and communication skills. Thanks to my involvement with TSA and DECA alike, I'm a completely different leader than I was just 3 years ago today. The once daunting task of managing groups in and out of the classroom has never been easier, and I'm quicker than ever to converse with new people, even as an introvert. Thanks to the experiences CTE has given me, I've been meddled with various leadership roles from the academic team to the tennis courts. Such positions undoubtedly helped me secure a slot into Tulane University's honors program, along with a notable academic scholarship that slightly offsets absurdly inflated tuition costs. Upon my acceptance, it finally dawned on me that all of this was worth it. My efforts have paid off, and I finally found my next step. All that being said, college is not for everyone, and that's 100% okay. For many, traditional schooling is wildly unappealing. The notorious question of, when am I ever going to use this, leads many to intake, regurgitate, forget, and repeat. But who can blame them? They thirst for real-world knowledge, not the meanings behind Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet or the inner workings of photosynthesis. If this large subset of kids is not presented with opportunities in career and technical education, you will lose them, and you will lose crucial Perkins funding as well. Fortunately, the value of obtaining a trade is not overlooked in my county. Our teachers, unlike many, are quick to support such admirable occupations, leading plenty of students to pursue once stigmatized professions. Students from Barron, Glasgow, and Metcalf high schools all have the phenomenal opportunity to attend Barron County Area Technology Center, which offers hands-on training to become an electrician, mechanic, or carpenter, among many other things. Certification and apprenticeship opportunities in the given trade directly translate to attractive, high-demand careers within our community upon graduation. This often motivates students to attend school more frequently and be more engaged, thus improving core academic skills. It's an obvious win-win. As Kentuckians, it's our responsibility to honor and uphold the legacy of Carl Perkins. We must continue to destigmatize trade. Pursuing interests shouldn't be taboo. As for some, education in trade can be a gateway to newfound generational success. We must encourage early participation by broadening this program's reach within middle schools across the state. And finally, we must commit to providing and supporting diverse educational opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have been to the Barron Center, and it is incredible.
It's nice, eh?
It is. Yes, it's very impressive, as are you, Hewitt. And I know of Representative Riley as unable to join us today, but he would be very proud of that performance and your
Thank you.
efforts to promote technical school training.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have other meetings that are during this time, so people will be having to go back and forth. So to accommodate those, we're going to go a little out of order. House Bill 397, an act relating to disaster days for schools impacted by Western Kentucky tornadoes and declaring an emergency, will be our first bill. Representative Dossett, if you will please to the table. If you have any guests joining you, if all of you will please introduce yourself for the record, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and ladies and gentlemen. It is with no great joy that I'm presenting this legislation this morning. If we lived in a perfect world, I would not be having to present this. But with that being said, it must be done. I'm joined by 2nd District Representative Richard Heath, and what I am presenting today is House Bill 397, which will allow up to 15 additional disaster days for our schools that were impacted by the tornadoes of December 10th and December 11th. In that, also included in that legislation, it will ensure that certified and non-certified employees this will guarantee that they have fulfilled their contract at the end of the year. The goal with this is to ensure that our students are able to move along, that our teachers, our personnel also, without having to continue into the summer with additional days. In saying that, I know there have been some, I've had some questions asked on this concerning the meeting the requirement of the 1,062 hours for our students. The number of schools that would have be able to access these additional days, there are 11 counties, including 2 independent school districts. But of those, only 3 will top 10 days. That will be Mayfield Independent, Dawson Springs Independent, and 1 school in Christian County, Pembroke Elementary. These were the schools that were the areas most heavily devastated by the tornadoes. In conversations I've had with my superintendents, some of these school districts will actually be having summer school for any of the students that are being behind, but there may be some that won't. In the words of one of my superintendents, Lenny Wayland, there from Dawson Springs, he stated to me, "We have so many staff and students who have lost everything and are in the process of trying to get their lives back in order. Those individuals are mentally, emotionally, and physically worn out by the toll the tornadoes have taken on them." By doing this, now this will mean that those school districts which already have added hours on currently, this will just excuse them and allow them to get back to normal. But by getting back to normal, I must share with you, those school personnel, the students, when they go home, they're still working, trying to repair and clean up debris. For all of you, if you will look at my hands right here, they're scarred. Over the weekend, I was working removing fencing. If I were at home today, I would be working in my shop, and at the end of that day, I would go home, and until dark, I would be continuing working on cleaning up and trying to straighten up the damage there from the tornado. This would just allow all of those individuals, our students and our school personnel, as I said, to get back to a semblance of normalcy and be able to do what they're needing to do at the end of the day. I will ask Representative Heath if he would mind sharing some of his comments.
We'll be glad to. Thank you for having us today. I wanted to pass on some information from the superintendent of the Mayfield Independent Schools. He was concerned that if we forgive the days, it will not include the hours. So I reached out to staff and asked that question, and this is the response I got. They would be viewed, when we're talking about the hours would be viewed as disaster days. When a disaster day is granted, normally by the commissioner, the day and hours that would have been accrued are counted in the calendar. So you won't see on the report that the school district is short on the 1,062 hours, because it will be in the total. So basically, the not only the days are forgiven, but the hours are forgiven. And I wanted to share a couple of stories. I saw firsthand the superintendents of the schools at the schools working. Mayfield, for example, they were there on Sunday along with teachers and volunteers and students, taking in donations and then sorting them out and redistributing those. And that wasn't an isolated situation. That went on for a couple of weeks. And then on Friday night, the night the storm came through, I was at the Mayfield City Hall, the fire department right behind City Hall. It was the only building that had lights on, had a generator running, and people were coming to the building. the superintendent of Graves County School System, along with some football coaches and football players, were bringing in cases of water to be stationed there and redistributed. So, I saw this activity. In my mind, the teachers and the staff have already worked these hours. They've already put their time in. And then I feel certain that the students gain more education during the time they were helping with the recovery and donation and volunteering than they would have if they'd have been in the classroom. It's amazing. It's been, 6 weeks, and it's still very emotional for me to talk about.
I would like to add to that. I saw the very same thing personally there from the staff from Pembroke Elementary, where my granddaughter attends. I saw those individuals in my front yard picking up debris. I saw students there also. I know I mentioned on the floor I had one lady from Oak Grove, a single mother who had her son with her, and I asked her, what is your reason for having him being here? And she said, it's to show him that he must be able to give to his community, because there could come a day this could be our home that's damaged. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions concerning House Bill 397.
Thank you very much. We do have a question from Representative Banta.
Good morning. Thank you for this. First of all, I would never question how much teachers work. That doesn't even come to my mind, because I know they're working all the time. My only question is, are we getting food? I worry about free and reduced kids who are not maybe getting the counseling they need. Is there some kind of mechanism that the superintendents have where children are getting fed, and maybe if they need some counseling, just the background things that schools do besides just history, math, English?
Yes, and during when school was closed, the staff was in the kitchen preparing meals, and as the people from the surrounding school came in to get supplies, they could also pick up food. They're using some of the same tactics that they used when we were doing virtual school. The school's buses went around and delivered meals and backpacks with food in them to the kids. They know where these individuals are and what their needs are, and they are reaching out to them. Unfortunately, a lot of those houses are gone now, and the students are gone too. Some of them are living as far away as Trigg County in the parks, and they're being bused back to Mayfield and Graves County daily. And House Bill 5 is helping with that transportation cost. But if they're able to get to a school, obviously they're able to get to food and resources and supplies.
I'm seeing the same, Representative Banta, there from my conversations with Superintendent Whalen in Dawson Springs, and also there within Pembroke Elementary. That was the school in Christian County that the roof was taken completely off, and those students were off for 10 days waiting for the roof to be repaired. I know personally from our experience at our house with the tornado, and then my visiting Pembroke Elementary after school they had resumed going to school, and conversations I had with their principal and assistant principal, they are working with the children. I know my granddaughter has mentioned to me the conversation with her friends. They ask about the tiles that are still not in the ceiling, things like that. So yes, they are getting the opportunity where they're speaking with individuals, and we're working with them at home. I know that's the goal my wife and I have done, and Aubrey's mom and dad as well. We have been working with them to make sure that when they ask questions about the storm and things that go, things that they are feeling, we have conversations with them as well, and church.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Just wanted to appreciate you, Representative Dawson, you, Representative Heath, for bringing this very important piece of legislation forward. I am curious to know, because we're seeing an increase in these climate disasters, if y'all talked about this being a standing policy, period, just in general, if the president were to declare a major disaster rather than only being in response to the December disaster. You know what I'm saying, Representative Heath?
Yes.
Okay.
My understanding is when we started the bill draft on this, that there were other disasters across the state previous to this that went through this same thing. Those days were forgiven. So there's a precedent that's been set. We're not plowing new ground here. This is kind of like it's our turn for some disaster relief. It's happened in other parts of the states through the years.
Correct, and I hope that I never have to be a part of another piece of legislation like this. But we all know, as I said, we don't live in a perfect world. We go by what the Lord gives us, and so if we see another disaster, then we would have to work toward that as well.
If I may.
Motion on the bill. Second.
If I may.
One more, please.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And I appreciate both of your responses. My concern is if we're not in session, if something were to happen at the end of a school year, just concerned that we don't already have a standing policy in place that says, in general, if the President of the United States were to declare a major disaster emergency, that we are prepared with legislation already in place to respond to that. So just something for us to think about in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a motion on the bill, but Representative Tipton wanted to speak, ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Dossett, Representative Heath, I appreciate you being here. I can't imagine what you all have gone through and your communities have gone through in the last few weeks. After Hurricane Katrina, I had the opportunity twice to go to that area and help with storm cleanup. So I imagine what I saw in the aftermath of that hurricane is very similar to what you're seeing here. And people are in survival mode right now. So I understand why you're bringing this legislation. And Representative Dossett, you and I have concern. I'm just concerned about learning loss here. And with COVID in the last 2 years, we're well aware of the learning loss. I shared some stats on the floor yesterday that just shared how much learning loss we've had in the last 2 years. And now you did mention that the school districts are already doing increased hours.
They have been working on this.
Do you have any details on that, or
with the passage of this? And these are the areas that were most devastated. They're still going to be short, but as I said, we're about to come into spring break. You could ask them to continue additional hours, but I think it's time to give them a reprieve. As I mentioned, those students, whenever they return home in the afternoon, the school personnel, they, like myself, are continuing to work on their homes, just trying to get their lives back to a semblance of normalcy that will be going on here all summer long. I've had the conversation there at my house. We'll be working late into the summer, just trying to get our property to look something similar to what it did a year ago, and it will never be that way. But they're just trying to correct their lives. Many, I know I'm having conversations with people from Dawson Springs that are living in shelters still. So, like I said, let's just give them the school staff, the students, a little reprieve on this, and let them kind of move back to a normal life.
Madam Chair, if I could just continue for a brief comment, and I certainly appreciate what you're saying there. I understand that. I think it's imperative, though, as school starts back in the fall, as hopefully there's more a sense of normalcy. Like you say, it's going to be years before we fully get some of these buildings rebuilt, people get back in their homes. But it's going to be imperative on the districts in that community to do everything they can to help students, to provide interventions, to provide extra resources. So just keep us aware of the needs of that so that we can help in making sure those needs are met. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Prunty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank you and comment that I saw this firsthand in Bremen and in Arlington Elementary in the Hopkins County, the Barnsley area that got affected in Bremen, that the schools were the hubs and the teachers and the staff and everybody just pitched in. It was amazing. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Seeing no further questions, we have a motion on the bill. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Representative Lewis. Please call the roll.
Representative Baker,
Yes.
Representative Banta,
Yes.
Representative Bojanowski,
Yes.
Representative Decker,
Yes.
Representative Donahue,
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Dossett,
Yes.
Representative Hart,
Yes.
Representative Koenig,
Yes.
Representative Lewis,
Yes.
Representative Massey, Representative McCool,
Yes.
Representative Miller, Representative Gibbons Prunty,
Yes.
Representative Rayburn,
Yes.
Representative Riley,
It would be a yes, off-site.
Representative Scott,
Yes.
Representative Timoney,
Yes.
Representative Tipton,
Yes.
Representative Weber,
Yes.
Representative White, Representative Wilner.
Yes, and I'd also like to record my attendance for this morning.
Thank you. Chair Huff.
Yes. House Bill 397 passes with the expression of opinion that the same should pass. And I think we need to remind everyone to please keep this area in your prayers. I know that the devastation and the displacement is tough on kids, and so we appreciate you bringing this forward. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Our next bill for consideration will be House Bill 270, an act relating to prevention-oriented child abuse awareness instruction. If Representative Tate would please come to the table, and if you have any guests, they can join you as well. Please introduce yourself for the record. You may proceed.
Chairwoman Huff and members of the committee, I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to bring this bill before you. I'm State Representative Nancy Tate, and I represent District 27, which is Meade and Hardin counties. Unfortunately, the founders of Aaron's Law, which is House Bill 270, is not able to participate with us this morning, but I have some information that I'd like to share from her. You know, one of the things in 2021, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Child Bureau of Child Maltreatment reported that for the third year in a row, Kentucky has the highest child abuse cases in the country. So unfortunately, we have a very serious situation that we need to deal with, and I believe that communication and education is the key for addressing this problem. There's no silver bullet that's going to address it, but with things like Aaron's Law, I believe that we can start tackling this issue. One of the things that I want to do is that Aaron sent me a letter that I'd like to read to you on. It's kind of large, but you know, if she was here, she would be able to represent this so much better than I can. But her name is, my name is Erin Merrill, and I'm a 35-year-old mother to 3 small girls from Illinois. People's Magazine named me one of 15 women changing the world, and Glamour Magazine named me Woman of the Year for my work to protect children across America. I'm the founder of Aaron's Law, a law that requires personal body safety to be taught in public schools to children once a year. Your state is one of 13 that has not passed it. So it's been passed in 37 states at this time. So I testified back in 2014 on Aaron's Law in Kentucky, and sadly it never got out of committee. So hopefully we'll be able to make some more traction this year. As a child, I was taught yearly in school tornado drills, bus drills, fire drills, stranger danger, DARE, bully intervention, internet safety, looking both ways when you cross the street. I knew not to go looking for the lost puppy. I knew how to run out of a burning building, and I graduated from DARE knowing the 8 ways to know how to say no to drugs. I knew there were 8 ways on how to get away until today. They never came to my childhood. On my very first overnight at my best friend's house, her uncle sexually abused me. When he continued to molest me and eventually raped me at 7 years old, and as I kept it a secret, this man threatened me that he would come get me if I told anyone. From ages 6 to 8, I continued to be molested and raped by him. My saving grace came at 8 and a half when I learned we were moving, only to find out that I was getting that much closer to my next perpetrator, and this time a family member. From 11 to 13 years old, my older teenage cousin molested me, and he threatened to tell everyone that this was our secret and that no one would believe me, and I would destroy my family if I told. The only message that I was getting as a child was that from the men hurting me, and that was to stay silent. Had I been taught to speak up and not to keep the secret and what a safe touch and unsafe touch is, a safe secret and an unsafe secret, I would have spoken up from the start instead of being abused for years as a child. It is a lesson that we all fail to teach our children across the world, and I have made it my mission for every child to be empowered with the voice that I never had as a child. I broke my silence after my sister came to me and told me that our cousin was sexually abusing her too. Had someone come in and taught us in school not to keep this a secret, it would have saved us years of abuse. Our children are abused for years and don't come forward until they are adults because they are educated only to stay silent and to be afraid, and it is their fault. There are currently 753,000 registered sex offenders in America, and in December of 2015, President Obama signed the Every Student Succeeds Act, and in that bill there is federal funding provided for every state to be used for Aaron's Law, so it is no longer an unfunded mandate. We put so much emphasis on stranger danger with children when 93% of the time children are abused by someone that they know and trust. Only 7% of the time is it the strangers that we worry so much about. There are 42 million survivors of sexual abuse living in America right now. 3 million of those are children, and that could fill 46 national football stadiums. Get that image into your mind for a moment. These children are sitting in our classrooms every day living in silence as their innocence is being killed, and the psychological impact it is having on them as they live in this horror. This law is common sense, and I'm asking for an hour out of the school year to give children the voice that she never had. With that voice, we are allowing our children to be silenced and to kill their innocence. It is time that we start fighting the war going on in our own backyards by empowering children with their voices and to put sexual offenders out of business. And I'm on a mission to get this passed in all 50 states, and I will not stop until I do. So, I appreciate Miss Aaron, and I apologize that she wasn't here to help us with this. But, again, just one other statistic is that according to the CDC, approximately 1 in 5 girls and 1 in 13 boys experience child sexual abuse at some points in their childhood. And again, 93% of the abuse is by someone in their family or someone that they know, and that the total lifetime economic burden of child sexual abuse in the United States in 2015 was estimated to be at least $9.3 billion. So again, this is, to me, this is common sense language that I think that we can surround ourselves with and support. So if there at this point, Ms. Chair Lady, at this point I would accept any questions. Great.
I think that
Questions?
Representative Decker would like to say a few words.
Thank you for bringing this bill, Representative Tate, and thank you for allowing me to ask a question. When I read this bill, quite frankly, I was surprised that this hadn't already been passed in Kentucky. I'm the executive director of a Christian nonprofit, and one of the things we do is we operate 2 homeless shelters for women and children, most of whom have been abused. Mm-hmm. From my experience there, I have learned that all children love their parents, right, even if the parents are the abusers. And they blame themselves most of the time instead of their abusers for the abuse. Mm-hmm. They are terrified of reporting the abuse, and I pray that this bill could provide the information they need, both to have the courage to report it and perhaps escape it. My question is there curriculum that Aaron's Law promotes for how this will be explained at school?
Yes. Thank you. That's a very excellent question. Yes, there is. When I go to aaronslaw.org, there's approximately 15 pieces of types of curriculum that's recommended. And as a matter of fact, I've looked at several of those. To me, they're very inexpensive, especially when we take into consideration the $9.3 billion that it's estimated to address to deal with this problem after it happens.
And is this anticipated to be a one-time training, or is it ongoing, or how is that expected to occur?
Yeah, so the intent is, and what I'll continue to do is I'll continue to work on this piece of legislation. As a matter of fact, you could probably, if it gets to the floor, we can consider that it'll have a little bit more pieces to it. But one of the thoughts is that it'll be an annual training, and that it'll take approximately 1 hour, but it'll be age-appropriate training as well, because we do know that, children that are in the first to third grade need different training than possibly the ones in high school. Right.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Representative Banta.
When you're working, and thank you, Representative Decker got answers to most of my questions. I'm glad it's funded. That makes me feel good.
Yes.
And is there any way that you could consider clarifying teacher to counselor or faculty? It could be the principal in the building that wants to do the training to it. So I just would like you to consider that.
Thank you. I
Thanks.
appreciate that.
Representative Rayburn.
Thank you. Representative Tate, one thing that I would like to see this bill have would be to define emotional and physical abuse.
Okay.
Can you define that for me as it would come to the curriculum?
So, wait just a second. There's very specific language that's actually in statute right now, and so with that, it will refer to that as well. I think that there's a KRS, and the suggestion is that it refer to that. So it is. I need to elaborate on KRS 156.095, and also to make sure that it includes that the KDE maintain list of approved, comprehensive, evidence-informed curriculum that should or shall be trauma-informed and include a minimum information on healthy relationships. So I'll continue to work on that.
Can I follow up?
Very quickly.
One concern that I have, would that include, spanking your children or raising your voice at your children? Would that be included as emotional abuse? So I'll take a look at that KRS as well. But
Okay.
I think that's some things we need to incorporate in this bill to define that. Thank you.
The intent is not for that to be part of it, but I'll work with you on that.
And a final comment, Representative Wilner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for raising this issue. I in my training to become a psychologist, I worked with child sexual abuse victims. My youngest clients were as young as 3 years old, and I know how devastating this is on whole generations of people, and so it's so important that we bring this. I'm really glad to hear you talk about that you're going to be fleshing this out some more. Because one of the questions I have, I don't see any requirement in here for the curriculum to be evidence-based or to be really focused on primary prevention. And you brought up stranger danger. I mean, the way this is written, a school could adopt stranger danger, which we know is not
the same.
What's needed.
That's correct.
So I'm glad to hear that you're going to be working on this, and I would love to have an opportunity to speak with you about it going forward.
Sounds wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the bill by Representative Tipton, a second by Representative Massey. Liz, please call the roll.
Representative Baker.
Yes.
Representative Banta.
Yes.
Representative Bojanowski.
Yes.
Representative Decker.
Yes.
Representative Donahue.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Dossett.
Yes.
Representative Hart.
Yes.
Representative Koenig.
Yes.
Representative Lewis.
Yes.
Representative Massey. Yes. Representative McCool. Representative Miller. Representative Gibbons-Prunty.
Yes.
Representative Rayburn.
No.
Representative Riley. Representative Scott.
Chairwoman, it sounds like there's some work that needs to be done on this bill, so I'm going to pass for now.
Representative Timoney.
Yes.
Representative Tipton.
Yes.
Representative Weber.
Yes.
Representative White. Representative Wilner.
I'm going to vote yes, but with the understanding that we'll be seeing a different, clearer version on the House floor. Thank you.
Chair Huff.
House Bill 270 passes with the expression of opinion that the same should pass. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final bill of the day will be House Bill 63, an act relating to school resource officers. If Representative Bratcher would come to the table, and any guests that you may have them introduce themselves. And before we begin, Representative Riley would like to speak to Hewitt just for a moment. So, if you will, let's afford him that opportunity. Representative Riley.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to congratulate Hewitt on being there today. I'm sorry, he's one of my constituents. I've known his family for a long time, comes from a great family, and I hear he's a fine young man, and I'm disappointed I'm not able to be there this morning because of a family illness. So Hewitt, congratulations, and I can't tell who's there with you. I hope maybe Doc's there with you, and just congratulations on all you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Bratcher, you may proceed.
Thank you. That was a great presentation with Hewitt. A new engineer in Kentucky, that's what we need. Madam Chair, this is House Bill 63. There's a committee substitute.
We have a motion on the committee sub by Representative Tipton. We have a second. Representative Timney, all in favor? All opposed? Committee sub is adopted.
You know, a few years ago, Madam Chair, our late great friend Bam Carney, Senator Max Wise, and you, Chair, and many others in the General Assembly and around the state, went around the state looking for ways, asking staff, teachers, the general public, what are some things we can do to make our schools safer? This was a result of what happened, the horrible thing that happened in Marshall County, the school shooting in Heath. And the goal was to find a solution, a bill, that would prevent this ever happening again, or at least to make it not be so tragic. The results of that bill, of that gathering, was a bill, Senate Bill 1, and it created the Kentucky School Safety and Resiliency Act. This act bore many ideas on safety, from mental health counseling to safety training, and it created the School Safety Center and a position called the School Safety Marshal. And one of the purposes, the main purposes of this bill, one of the main ones, was to create an SRO, School Safety Officer. This SRO would be POP certified, sworn officer that would be on the grounds performing safety functions and at the ready if the unspeakable happens. The bill today, the committee substitute of House Bill 63, gives us more guidance on that bill, as there has been some confusion of implementing it. This bill is not an unfunded mandate. This committee substitute is not unfunded. This, I was told, was the next step to get our safety, the safety in our schools funded. This bill would be a good step forward, because what this bill will do, two things mainly. One, it defines that an SRO be physically on a campus of assignment. That's the first part. And the second part, it gives school districts that do not have funding or enough officers, and we know there's not enough officers out there to fulfill this role. There's not enough staff, and this School Safety Act's requirement will have the district informing the school safety marshal of the problem that a school is having that cannot fulfill the intentions of Senate Bill 1, and a plan can be devised to make it happen. Now, here's an important thing that this bill will do too. The Senate Bill 1 required an annual report on school safety. And many of if you've ever seen it, it's a very detailed, well put together report every year. One of the things that's lacking is reasons why schools cannot fund or find personnel, or if that's a problem. They can keep track of the statistics of why schools can't fulfill the original intent of Senate Bill 1. So with those statistics, as they gather, that will be a great movement to get us to fund it. They'll have stats to say, look, this school district is having problems with funding or whatnot, and it'll be in the report. It'll be a great report to get us to that next step of funding Senate Bill 1, the School Safety and Resiliency Act. So that's it, and I hope we can pass that today, Madam Chair. I'll take any questions, of course.
Thank you. We have a motion on the bill by Representative Musted, second by Representative Timoney. We do have some that want to speak in regards to the bill as well from our audience. But we'll take the questions and then we'll have them speak and then we'll take a vote. So Representative Bojanowski.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to start with, I've been a teacher in an elementary school in JCPS for 13 years. And at no point in my personal experience have I felt unsafe in our building with our current plan. So that's just my perspective from an elementary level. I'd like to talk a little bit about local control. So when we met to discuss the COVID mitigation plans, our body came to a consensus that the local control of the locally elected school boards in each of our 171 districts were best suited to protect our children and to provide safety in a global pandemic. And that was without their plans having to be approved by the public health department. So now we're talking the complete opposite of local control in that our locally elected school board in Jefferson County, and I'm going to speak of Jefferson County because I feel like this bill is directly aimed toward Jefferson County. Our locally elected school board has decided 7-0 unanimously to adopt the safety plan that has been presented by Dr. Polio. Could you explain why this body, such a proponent of local control, is now not advocating for local control in another safety situation?
Well, Senate Bill 1 was passed before COVID, and Senate Bill 1 has the intention of Senate Bill 1 is to, if you're talking about SROs, is to have an SRO on every campus. So that is the law of the state right now, the Commonwealth. So to me, we're talking apples and oranges. Wearing a mask or social distancing is much lower to me than the unspeakable of what we know could happen one day in one of our schools if there's no security there. So I don't know how to really answer that. We could talk about COVID restrictions or we could talk about school safety officers during a horrible situation. To me, they don't relate to each other. I understand your concept of local control on one item and a statewide law on the other, but it's just two different things, and the two different things speak for themselves.
May I just follow up briefly?
Briefly.
All right. So, it's very frustrating from my position to hear local control, and then for a bill to be presented to us that would take away the local control of our elected school board, who, according to their attorneys, are following the nature of the law. So I thank you for taking my question and for communicating with me about this topic. But I simply feel like if local control is essential during a global pandemic, that local control can know best how to keep our students safe. Thank you.
Well, if I could answer, then maybe you should work to repeal the School Safety Resiliency Act because that was created before COVID. There are many items that are local control, and then there are many Commonwealth-wide statutes. So this isn't the first time that's come to the front. There's local control on some things, and who provides that local control? The legislature. They say you can have local control on X, Y, Z, but there's a state law on ABC. So I understand your frustration. I just don't agree with it on this issue.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Chairman Bratcher, just for people who don't have the committee sub in front of them, what's the difference between the original bill and the committee sub? I'm not talking about those of us on the committee. I'm talking about people there.
I'm sorry. Okay. Well, the first bill just said, the first bill, House Bill 63, just simply said that you can't use the loophole of there's not enough funds or not enough personnel. Well, that was totally inadequate, and I take the fall on that one. So I went to the school safety marshal. I went to many experts in the field, and that's when we created the committee sub, to where if you can't afford the intentions of the School Safety Act, then send your reasons to the School Safety Center and the School Safety Marshal, the statewide marshal, and let's work on a plan to get you there. And like I said, one of the great byproducts of this committee, Madam Chair and committee, is that now we will know what schools can't reach the level that Senate Bill 1, the School Safety Act, requires, and we can find out why they can't reach that level, and maybe we can do something to help them in the future. But we got to have those statistics of, why can't you fulfill Senate Bill 1? Does that answer?
And if I could follow up
briefly.
Thank you, Chairwoman. So, Chairman Bratcher, just to follow up then, where it says as funds and qualified personnel become available, that's been stricken from this particular committee substitute. So where would funds come from to pay for the school resource officers?
Well, they come from the district, unless the district can't afford it, and then they just simply go to the, they go to the school safety officer, statewide marshal, and they develop a plan to get them there. And if you can't get there, you can't get there. This is not an unfunded mandate.
Oh, I just want to be clear. I didn't say it was unfunded mandate. I'm just trying to understand where the money's coming from.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Donahue.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to everybody here. Representative, I do have a couple issues with the bill. I mean, one thing is about the funding, to make sure that we fund, and I will say this, and the other thing is about what we use in school. I think we should have some flexibility, whether it's a taser or a gun. Unfortunately, and hang on to your hats, when I was in school in the 60s, we in high school, we had police officers in the school, and people forget that. Some of our schools in Louisville, Kentucky, had police officers in the school. So I've often said about resource officers, they can be called a resource ambassador. They can be different things like that, because when I was in school, somebody that handled a lot of times would be my biology teacher that people have respect for, but it was the one that we call when there was any kind of issue in the school. So we've gotten away from that. But unfortunately, with today's society, we have to have somebody in those schools. I want to make sure that we're fully funded at every school. I believe every school should have one. But I think the school system should be able to make those decisions, whether or not they're in kindergartens or middle schools and stuff like that as well, too. But that's the only concerns I have, is about making sure they're funded. Unfortunately, in this day and age, we have to have someone there. I think we ought to take a look at what their responsibilities are going to be as to. And I don't want to see a situation where a resource officer comes to school and when there's a problem. I think they should be there. They should be a part of what's going on. Those kids should be able to build a relationship with those individuals, man or woman that's there. And so we can alleviate some of the problems because they'll trust them and come talk to them. But I'm going to support this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for discussing the SROs. I just want to quickly mention I've witnessed firsthand the relationships that these SROs are creating with students, and just how grateful I am that someone is there to protect my daughter as a teacher, and my grandchildren are in the public schools. So it's, to me, it's just very important that we realize what their need is. And with all due respect to Representative Bojanowski's experience, if you had asked someone that had been through this devastation of a school shooting, they would have probably had the same experience that you had the day before. I don't think we ever imagined such horrific actions within our school system. So, but I just want to commend the SROs that are in our districts, because they are trying to form relationships and doing a fantastic job for the ones, and I've witnessed quite a few doing their job. So I just wanted to mention that. Also, Representative Baker has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairman Bratcher, thank you for bringing this. The safety of our students, of our educators, the people in those buildings, they are of utmost importance, and thank you for the work you've done on this. I have witnessed over the years some of the SROs in my community, and these are good men. These are men who are there for safety, but they provide a positive male role model within that building that some of these young students need, particularly the young men in the building. And they fill so many roles throughout that. And so I appreciate what you're doing. As a matter of local control, my understanding is from my district where I live, there are some buildings that have full-time people and there are some who float. And the district makes that decision. Does this take that decision away from them? Will they continue to do that as they move forward and work out that plan and report to the state marshal? Will they continue to make the decisions on which buildings have the SROs first and which ones get them later on?
Sure, they will. You know, Jefferson County Public Schools just came up with a great new plan. It's a great first step, you know, and the goal is to have an SRO. That's the original intent of Senate Bill 1, was to have an SRO on every school campus. And, you know, there's ways to get to there. You know, it doesn't have to, Rome wasn't built overnight, right? I mean, it takes a while, and with the funding and the lack of personnel, it's going to take some time to get there. So, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, there's still a lot of local control in this.
Yes, sir. That's the way I see it, and thank you so much for allowing me to just weigh in.
Thank you. Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Bratcher, I appreciate you bringing this. I appreciate your passion. I appreciate your concern for the students across the Commonwealth of Kentucky. This is the 6th year I've served on the House Education Committee. I've really enjoyed my time here. It's been a great experience, great learning experience. And of all the committee meetings we have, I don't remember a lot. I'll be honest, I don't always remember what's happened at previous committee meetings, but I do remember one committee meeting very specifically. Bam Carney was chairing that meeting, my good friend. We closed the meeting, and he made an announcement here in this very room that there had been a shooting at Marshall County High School. I still remember the shock and horror of that announcement, just like there was shock and horror always all the way across our state, across the country, each time we hear of a situation like this. Our children are our future. They are so precious. I attended some of the meetings that took place across the state in the development of Senate Bill 1. Representative Carney, Senator Wise took great steps to incorporate anybody, bring anybody to the table who wanted to have input on this decision. We came up with Senate Bill 1. And Representative Bratcher, you are right. It is the intent of Senate Bill 1 that every school campus in the state of Kentucky have a school resource officer. I know it's controversial. If you read on in this bill, because it's in current statute, it says they will have an armed school resource officer, and I know that's controversial in some settings. I had the opportunity to serve as principal for the day at Robert B. Turner Elementary School in Anderson County last fall. That school had a deputy sheriff serving as a school resource officer. My time there that day, I had an opportunity to observe the interaction between that officer, that deputy, and the students in the school. It was a bonding type of relationship. It was a relation. You could definitely see the students respected that officer. And that's what we need in our schools. We have so many social problems now. Our youth are dealing with so many issues. They need positive role models. And they need to learn that they can trust a police officer, a law enforcement official. And that seems to be lacking in our society. Again, this is not a perfect solution. The state's in a little better financial situation than we have been in the past, and I serve on appropriations revenue, and I'm more than willing to talk to my fellow members and Chair Petrie, and maybe there is some funding we can come up with to help solve this problem. So I appreciate this, certainly support this bill, and thank you for bringing it forth, Representative Bratcher.
Thank you.
Representative Massey.
Thank you, Representative Bratcher and seatmate, for being here today and presenting on this matter. I will tell you that long before some of these shootings occurred in my county, where I served for a number of years, we now have an SRO in every school. But I'll never forget, I was a brand new baby board member when they came to me and asked me about SROs, and the board's admonition to the sheriff at that time was, well, we're glad to have these officers in our buildings, but we don't want don't want them to have firearms. I'll never forget what Sheriff Helmig said to me at that point. He says, look, if you're going to have us do a job, you have to allow us to have the tools to do our job. And that was one of the tools that they obviously use. And not only protecting themselves, the other comment he said is, look, I'm not going to put my people in harm's way if they don't have a way to protect themselves. So the history was we had an SRO in our buildings. We had one in each campus at that time until Marshall County. And then we worked with our sheriff's department in a cooperative effort and a collaborative effort to put an SRO in every school in our district. Now that's a much more difficult task in Jefferson County that has so many schools. I will say that you and I have had many discussions about, and I know this is not an unfunded mandate, but we've had many discussions about what unfunded mandates are. And schools have been bludgeoned with many unfunded mandates over the years. I mean, many unfunded mandates. And then we get criticized as public schools about we're not failing, we're not keeping up, when you're telling us to do more work, but you're not giving us the tools or the money to do that work. And that's a very frustrating endeavor, and I fought against that for many, many years at the state level and the national level. I think we need to fund our SROs. I think we need, as a state, to step up and fund the SROs in the schools around our state, including Jefferson County, because a life is worth that funding, just candidly. A life is worth that funding. And our SROs are actually mentors to those students. And so students will trust them. I did a research paper, not that anyone cares, but I had a research paper when I was in college between the attitudes towards police in Boone County as opposed to Covington. And in Boone County, they embraced it and said, they're my friend, I can go to them, I trust them, if I need help, I run to them. And in Covington, they said, they took my brother away, they came into my house and arrested my dad. And there was this huge mistrust, and for a variety of reasons. But what I learned with that was invaluable. We need to work on building trust in our schools with these security personnel. These officers can be part of the team, if you will. We've incorporated them in that way in Boone County, and I hope in Jefferson County they'll consider doing that. But I think we as a legislative body ought to commit to getting the funding for Senate Bill 1. It's easy to pass a bill. It really, not always super easy, but it's easy to pass a bill and say we want to do these great things, but we're not going to fund it. Until we step up to the plate and fund the commitments we make, we're going to continue to have these problems. So thank you for bringing our attention to this, and I appreciate your desire to protect the students within your districts, and I just thank you for that.
Thank you, Representative Massey, seatmate, and that annual report that the Safety Center does every year on school safety, it has a percentage of how many are following the SRO rule. And there's like half the schools are not doing that. And you know what? One of the first questions I was asked, I've been told by the marshal and the ones that work this every day, is they say, why? Why aren't they doing that? Well, the obvious is, the lack of funding and the lack of personnel, but it's not there in black and white. And I don't know how you. One fella told me this: how are we ever going to approach the legislature and say this is a lack of funding, the reason it's not happening? So that's why I reiterate: this is a first step to providing statistics. Before we ever dole out a dime, that we want to know all the information of where that money is going. And this will be a great first step to get us to the point of hopefully funding the entire School Safety and Resiliency Act.
Thank you. Representative Wilner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Rep. Bratcher. Just, Senate Bill 1 and then in 2019 and then Senate Bill 8 in 2020, it was the result of a very thoughtful process, as many people here have outlined. And I remember that day of the Marshall County shooting. I remember how devastating that news was. I remember that there was an SRO on the campus at the time that shooting happened. I have many questions. As personnel and funding become available, was part of Senate Bill 1 and then later Senate Bill 8, and now we're looking to get rid of that, it looks like. And funding is one issue, but personnel is another issue. And I know that at least in Jefferson County, where you and I live, we are short many, 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 many police officers. And so my understanding prior was that if personnel is not available, it would be up to the discretion of the school system, the local school district, where those limited number of officers are assigned. And can you help me clarify for me, is that now no longer up to local decision making? It has to go through the state security marshal?
Sure, they would work together and come up with a plan.
Oh, okay, but prior to this bill, that would be left to the discretion of the school system. And I have one other question. We've heard stories, and I personally, and I'm sure you too, have met some wonderful school resource officers, men and women, who serve in these roles and do a fantastic job and build relationships with students. Sadly, we've also had incidents where school resource officers have not engaged safely with students. Students have been injured, students have been traumatized, students have been put into the criminal justice system over what was essentially a school discipline issue. And so part of the Jefferson County plan, when that happens, if, for an example, an LMPD officer injures a JCPS student within a JCPS school, there's no resource for the school system to address that because it happens with LMPD. It's a whole separate chain of command. And so if there's a concern with what happened in the school, it's now beyond the school's control. My understanding is that Senate Bill 1 and then later Senate Bill 8 allowed for school law enforcement officers that could be hired by the school system who would actually report to the superintendent of schools. Does this bill preclude those school law enforcement officers that report to the school system rather than report to a police department?
Can you rephrase that?
Yes. School law enforcement officers are not necessarily hired by, for example, Louisville Metro Police Department. A school law enforcement officer could be hired by JCPS, would report to JCPS. If there are disciplinary matters, if students are injured at the hands of a school law enforcement officer, it would be JCPS's responsibility because they hire that person, they're responsible for them. Would this bill allow school districts to hire their own security personnel, or would they be forced to work with police departments?
They wouldn't be forced to work with anyone. As far as this bill is concerned, it's the school districts would have the autonomy to hire who they want.
So the school resource officer is...
Please go through the chair if you have another question.
I'm sorry. I'm just working this through in my mind. I'm through. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Miller.
Thank you. I was principal and assistant principal 32 years. In fact, Representative Bratcher was my student.
It's true.
Pretty good student, really.
Now, come on.
We can't tell everything.
We can't tell everything.
But I feel like he's trying to do what's right for our schools and our students. You know, we had, when I was involved, we had hall monitors, but they were very valuable until we got the SROs. You know, students begin to trust them, and a lot of times they tell them things that are going to happen, and we cut it off before it does happen. They let you know when someone might have a gun in school. They let you know many, many things. Maybe even students that are being abused. So I think these people are very important to us. And we need to find money to put them in all of our schools. But when the SROs came into Jefferson County, they did a great job. I know Pleasure Ridge Park had one that was very, very useful. But they did away with them. And I just think we need to think about having someone in our schools that can help us in many ways, because principals and assistant principals and teachers, counselors, we can't do everything. So we do need people there to help us. I support this bill, and I feel like that good things will come out of it, because we got people in here that can help us find the money, and I don't know why we can't put them in all schools. So thank you for bringing the bill, and I'll try to support it all the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Miller. Some of my finest days were under his principalmanship, I guess is the right word. It's easy to say, let's go back to the old days. I felt so safe in all my schools that I went to in Jefferson County Public Schools. I went to freshman and sophomore year at PRP, and he paddled me, and that's, you've heard that, and that's true, but we were flipping coins against the new gym and spitting tobacco. We were on the baseball team. We thought we were something else. But here's interesting. I was bused my junior and senior year to Shawnee, and we had 3 SROs there, and they were some of the coolest guys. And when I say cool, I mean they were somebody you could talk to. They were always around. They immediately stopped any scuffles, or how kids are. They immediately stepped in. They all 3 were African American. Not that that matters, but they were 3 of the greatest guys that I had met, other than Principal Miller at PRP. But they made our time at Shawnee, when I was bused there my junior and senior year, safe. It made it safe. It felt safe. And that's why, and one of the reasons I'm continuing to do this, and I say this a lot because I think it's important. Ever since this started, and I kind of took the point on it, I received so many emails from parents, staff, and teachers. And even, I called her a mental health counselor, but I found out later she was a social worker. That she makes visits to different schools. And on the same day, somebody said, well, you need to quit worrying about SROs and make sure you get more mental health counselors. Well, that...
Representative Bratcher.
Yes, I'm sorry.
If you want a vote on this bill.
Okay, I'm losing my audience here.
Then I'm going to have to interrupt you and allow for the last comments by Representative Tim.
Chair Huff, thank you for this opportunity. Representative Bratcher, thank you for bringing this bill forward. As a former teacher and former principal, elementary and middle school, in an urban area, I support this bill. And if there are school districts in the state that need a role model to go by, Fayette County Public Schools. The late Manny Koch passed his 10-point safety plan, which was outstanding. Increased the number of officers in the school buildings, as well as increased funding for social workers and mental health professionals. Those went hand in hand. We also implemented, it was kind of controversial at the time, metal detectors. But I can tell you that as an assistant principal, I relied heavily on our school resource officers for guidance, the training I was given on due process, following due process, and how critical that is for student rights. I was improved tremendously just on the relationships I had with our school resource officers. I think this is warranted. Every school that I've worked in, with the exception of a school in Jefferson County, we had school resource officers. And it was, as a teacher, I always felt safe in my classrooms, but as a principal, I always liked having someone there to help. Now, jurisdictional issues were something that we would always have discussions about, and those things have to be ironed out, but they have been, and they can be. There's a lot of research about how important this is. I just think of the relationships that our school resource officers have with our student body, as well as our staff members. I think they're very, very important to have there, and I thank you for bringing this bill forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bratcher. We do have some guests that would like to speak. First, Lyndon Pryor, if you would come to the table, introduce yourself for the record, and you have about 5 minutes.
Thank you. Lyndon Pryor. I am here as a concerned constituent and parent from Louisville, Kentucky. I'm the father of a first grader in Louisville, Kentucky. And one thing I can say about her time so far through kindergarten and first grade, obviously we've been in the midst of a pandemic, and so it has not been anything that we have expected or anticipated for what her first years of school would look like. But I've gotten to know the folks in her building, her classmates, and I can say with all confidence that there's a lot of things that they need, but more officers in schools, or an officer in this case, for her school is not one of them, and certainly not someone else with a gun. What students and teachers and school administrators need more than anything are more truly trusted and skilled adults in their buildings. Individuals who are trained to teach, counsel, and most importantly, engender trust among students, the students and staff that they serve. This is often just not the case for SROs, and I've heard you all speak a lot about some of the experiences that you all have, but frankly, I'd like to posit that there is a different experience for others, and we know this from national data. Most teachers who have been polled nationally, as well as students, talk about feelings of mistrust and feeling uncomfortable in spaces where officers are present. And data supports these feelings because we know that SROs have a disproportionate rate of arrest for nonviolent behavior. The available research concludes that those higher rates are based on SROs reporting low-level behaviors as crime. And this is especially true for Black and brown students, people who look like me and my daughter. Simply put, SROs have been shown to detract from healthy and productive learning environments. They tend to have little to no impact on actually reducing violent behavior, and I think that is an important thing to stress, since somewhat of the foundation of this bill is laid on this idea of keeping kids safe. But many of the mass shootings that have occurred in schools have been in spaces where SROs were still present, and yet those things still took place. And so the idea, or this mythology around safety, is one that we really need to debunk. But lastly, SROs have been proven to exacerbate the school-to-prison pipeline. They are a drain on district budgets. They are cumbersome for law enforcement agencies already saddled with self-proclaimed staffing shortages. And the simple fact is that we've been here long enough to know that this is not necessarily answered to keeping kids safe and more importantly, helping kids learn, which is the point of school. So what I think we should be doing is investing in proven solutions that students, teachers, staff, and families have asked for and stand behind. Trauma-informed mental health providers, which I heard mentioned here, counselors, teachers' aides, and other adults tasked and trained, specifically trained, to actually support students in the ways that matter most to them, most to their personal and academic well-being. Far too often in our history, we have used education and our children as pawns for kind of uninformed and self-serving political whims of adults. And that's just really unfortunate. We seem to be more willing to sacrifice their education and their mental and physical security to score points in some imaginary game in which they are the only losers. Now more than ever, our kids need resources and funding for the things that are going to help them succeed and thrive in the classroom and beyond. And simply put, I just do not believe that SROs are going to do that, and the data supports that. And that is the thing that I cannot stress enough. The data supports that. And if you listen to the voices of the kids who have been through recent school shootings, recent ones, whether that be students going back all the way to Columbine, but in Florida, in Connecticut, and other places, those students have been screaming out for different types of changes and reforms that deal with what happens to them in school, but none of them are screaming for SROs. That should tell us something. I just ask that this body would act on behalf of all the students. I respect that some of you have had good experiences with SROs, and I acknowledge that that is possible. But we have to always consider the unintended consequences and allow for schools to make the decisions that's going to be best for all of their students locally. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you. We have a representative from the ACLU. If you would come to the table, please. You have about 5 minutes.
The ACLU representative had to leave. I'm also signed up. I'm Sadiqa Reynolds with the Louisville Urban League. Would you mind if I take that test?
No, that'd be fine.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Fueled by a 24-hour news cycle and social media.
Excuse me, would you introduce yourself for the record, please? Thank you.
I thought, yeah, absolutely. I'm Sadiqa Reynolds, President and CEO of the Louisville Urban League. We're a civil rights organization. We are based in Louisville, Kentucky. There's also a Lexington Urban League in Lexington. And our focus is on jobs, justice, education, health, and housing. Thank you all. Fueled by a 24-hour news cycle and social media, the idea that our youth are more incorrigible, more criminal, and more violent has intensified the cries for police presence in schools. The truth of the matter is that mass shootings at schools are rare, and SROs do not prevent or stop them. In fact, research shows that the presence of SROs is detrimental to the welfare of our children, leading to the increased criminalization of youth for childlike behaviors. A student is far more likely to be involved in a shooting off campus. Even though enhanced security measures such as police and security officers were largely inspired by school shootings in mostly white suburban schools, they have been most readily adopted and enforced in urban schools with low student-to-teacher ratios, high percentages of students of color, and lower test scores. SROs, and you need to hear this, no matter how well trained, cannot provide the same ongoing support that a mental health professional, social worker, or other adult charged with supporting students can. Representative Donahue, I don't understand where you get the data. More people die in school shootings where an armed officer is present than where there isn't one. According to a new study published by a criminal justice professor, Jillian Peterson, who looked at 133 shootings where one or more people were intentionally shot in a school building or where someone came to school armed with the intent of firing indiscriminately, the study found that there were 3 times as many people killed where there was an officer on the scene who was armed. Part of the reason for that may be that someone going to a school where there is an armed officer goes with more ammunition, goes with a suicidal thought. We have to look at the data. This is not something that you do and then think about. There will be consequences for this. The things our students need are adults with bandwidth. Many of you all have talked about trust, and you've talked about trust building, and you said that SROs, they can create these relationships, and they absolutely can. And they absolutely can follow up on things that the students have told them. But so can other trusted adults, whether they be mental health workers, whether they be social workers, whether they are just a student in aid in the classroom. If you build a relationship with students, They will tell you what is happening. They will tell you what's happening in school, outside of school, in their homes. I run an organization where we support students. We run out of school time programs. I have staff who have interrupted suicides, who have stopped violence in schools before they got there. We have notified authorities of abuse. We have found children who were missing. That is correct. You can build relationships and build trust. You don't have to have a weapon to do that. And in fact, it doesn't help. If you are talking about saving lives, this is not the way to do it. And in fact, the data absolutely opposes it. Read a study. There are many out there that will tell you that. The other thing I've thought about as I've been sitting here listening to you all, I hear you talk about the tornado and the devastation, what those families and those children have been through. And we're talking about resiliency. Imagine that children have been traumatized. They have no home. They have been displaced. That's your word that was used here today. And your response is to send police? Where is the mercy in that for our families, for our students? What are we doing to support them with mental health? Representative, you talked about what Manny did in Lexington, but he did that in conjunction with mental health therapists. You have said nothing about funding mental health therapists. You have said nothing about sending social workers into schools. Our children are traumatized. They were traumatized before the pandemic, and it is worse now. Ask any teacher, ask anybody in there, ask yourselves, what is happening with your own families? Depression is up 600%. Anxiety is up 800%. The suicide rate, is there one of you that knows how many children in your district has killed themselves since we started school this year, last year even? These children need something other than police. This is not to demonize police. I talked to 3 police chiefs last night. I love them. I support them. But let me tell you something. That is not the answer for our students. It is not enough. It is not going to save lives. It hasn't. And as Representative Wilner pointed out in the big school shooting that happened, unfortunately, in our state, there was an SRO present. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg you to do some research before you push forward with this. JCPS has offered a plan that does allow for SROs to be on a campus regionally. It is not perfect. It is not what I would want, but it is something that speaks to what you need. But you have got to do what is best for our students. They need mental health support. They are self-medicating. Listen to this. They are bringing dabs into schools. No police officer is going to be able to detect those things. They are self-medicating because we don't have the resources. And you have said today, a couple of you have said, and I wrote it down, it's worth the money. It's worth the money. When will you show Kentucky that our students are worth the money? Invest in preventive help. Police are Band-Aids. Police are Band-Aids. We need front-end support for our students, and not just in Jefferson County, and not just for Black and brown students, for white students, for all of the students. They are suffering, and this doesn't help. And the fact that you would suggest that we would spend any dime that we find on police instead of getting help for our young people, how dare you? How dare us? It is irresponsible as adults. And I know your hearts are in the right place. I listen to Representative Bratcher. I do not think he is a bad man. I do not think any of you all, I will not demonize you. That is not what I'm here to do. I'm here to tell you that you are making a terrible error. And it is important, Chair Huff, because the dollars that you will spend and force these districts to spend cannot be used on the things that they need and the humans that they need in the building with the bandwidth to follow up. That's what we haven't had. We've got teachers, we've got librarians. I'm almost finished. I know. I'm looking at the time.
We need to take a vote.
Well, I understand that. My 5 minutes are not quite up. I think I've been looking at it. One more second and I'm done. Thank you so much, Representative Chair Huff. I want to say this. The dollars that you redirect will not be able to be used in the schools to help with more adults to prevent the things that are happening. Please do not do this. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the bill by Representative Dossett, a second by Representative Timoney. Liz, please call the roll.
Representative Baker?
Yes.
Representative Banta?
Yes.
Representative Bojanowski?
No.
Representative Decker?
Yes.
Representative Donahue?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Dossett? Representative Hart? Representative Koenig?
Yes.
Representative Lewis?
Yes.
Representative Massey? Yes. Representative McCool?
Yes.
Representative Miller? Representative Gibbons-Prunty?
Yes.
Representative Rayburn?
Yes.
Representative Riley? Representative Scott?
No.
Representative Timoney?
Yes.
Representative Tipton?
Yes.
Representative Weber?
Yes.
Representative White? Representative Wilner?
No.
Chair Huff?
Yes. House Bill 63 passes with expression of opinion that the same should pass with committee substitute attached thereto. Thank you very much. Do you have any further business? Any questions? We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?